We are handed a specific script about how retirement should work. It ends with a cake, a handshake, and an unbroken stretch of pure relaxation. That narrative creates a heavy, silent burden. Feeling a sense of struggle when you are expected to be living the dream often leads to the false assumption that you are ungrateful or personally flawed. But look at what actually happens 3 to 6 months after the farewell party. The congratulatory calls stop. A profound, isolating quiet settles in, and it's a quiet nobody prepares you for. Without a schedule enforcing a daily rhythm, behavior starts to drift. You might find yourself eating lunch at 3 in the afternoon, or staring at the ceiling wide awake at 2 in the morning. Then comes a common yet rarely discussed behavioral shift, opening a bottle of wine at 4 in the afternoon instead of 7. Removing the main organizing structure of an adult life sends every secondary system it supported into freefall. This is the mechanism of adjustment disorder, a clinical condition triggered by the demolition of life's invisible architecture. Let's break down the collapse, starting with temporal structure. The 9-to-5 workday was a rigid boundary, an invisible scaffolding for your biology. When that disappears, days lose their edges. Your circadian rhythm collapses into a shapeless blur, lacking external cues for alertness and rest. The second structural pillar you lose is your workplace-embedded social network. Many retirees face a harsh realization. Deep, personal friends were actually just work friends. The relationship functioned perfectly, but it was strictly dependent on shared physical proximity. Without the physical office building to facilitate casual interaction, those friendships simply don't have anywhere to happen. The environment that sustained them is gone. You lose the external frameworks that dictated exactly how you spent your time and exactly who you spent it with. That brings us to the third missing pillar: occupational identity. Measurable psychological distress occurs when someone asks the simple question, "What do you do?" A question that used to have an easy, automatic answer suddenly reveals a massive void in how you define yourself. This void quickly bleeds into the home. When couples suddenly share the same domestic space all day, every day, friction is almost guaranteed. The work week used to artificially separate couples, providing built-in breathing room. Now, they must deliberately renegotiate their daily roles and divide their shared territory. Giving up a job title means surrendering a core piece of your self-image. It creates an internal instability that places immense structural stress on your closest personal relationship. The loss of identity eventually reaches beyond the home, creating systemic consequences for a retiree's long-term financial security. Clients often spend decades meticulously planning their finances with advisors, mapping out compound interest and withdrawal rates with extreme precision. However, they almost never plan for the loss of their identity. This split-screen chart illustrates how psychological distress alters economic behavior. On the left is the study modeling planned before retirement. On the right, we see the impact of adjustment distress. The retiree's baseline risk tolerance becomes erratic as they navigate an identity void. Because they are struggling to find a new sense of purpose, retirees often make impulsive decisions regarding spending and relocation that contradict their original plans. This volatility can actively threaten the assets they spent 40 years building. Late-life depression often serves as a signal that the structural pillars of a person's life have collapsed, requiring an intentional clinical rebuilding process. This diagram outlines the blueprint for reconstruction. Acceptance and commitment therapy clarifies personal values, creating a foundation for pillars of time, identity, and community. Next, behavioral activation purposefully enforces a brand new daily structure, locking values into a predictable routine. From there, couples therapy is used to mediate household dynamics, helping partners redraw the boundaries of their shared space and responsibilities. Professional screening by a licensed clinician is critical throughout this process, as late life frequently presents as physical, somatic symptoms rather than reported sadness. Navigating the transition into retirement requires active effort and reconstruction. With the proper clinical guidance, the architecture of adult life can be successfully rebuilt.